Hello all out there in YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. So we're back at Sadie's house for a while. Here's a picture of her. She's a very good girl. Old lady Sadie. But anyway, so yeah, I'm dog sitting Sadie for a few days, and wanted to get a video out to you guys, so typical apology. I apologize if I'm not in my usual location, I apologize if the lighting's kind of off, and I apologize if the audio is kind of off. I just wanted to get a video out to you guys, and this was the best place to film in this household. So this is a video that I've been thinking about for a while. As you all know, I'm a huge horror fan. I love the horror genre. Obviously, if you're on my channel, I love horror movies, exploitation movies, grindhouse movies, B-movies, cult films. But another major interest of mine is mythology. I love studying folklore and mythology from different cultures all over the world. I used to be really into mythology when I was younger, but unfortunately, when I worked in seafood wholesale, I was working so much that I kinda lost track of it. But over the past few years, I've been getting back into it, and I wanted to explore it a little bit on this channel. So, as someone who is a horror fan, and as someone who is a fan of mythology, I decided to combine them in this video here. And we're going to be talking about mythical creatures that I think would be good characters for a horror movie, or good ideas for a horror film. Now, all of us on this channel, we love a good horror movie, we love a good monster movie, and people talk about how there aren't a lot of original ideas in horror anymore, and a lot of stories have been done before, and a lot of the stories we see in pop culture, whether it be books, movies, TV, video games, what have you, are retellings of certain other stories, or different ways of telling stories that have been done so many times. You know, the typical story archetypes have been done so many times, and throughout history we find different ways to tell them. We have the typical horror movie monsters that we see so much in the horror genre. We see zombies, we see vampires, we see werewolves. You know, we see like big lizard monsters and stuff like that. But you know, there are those monsters that we see so much throughout the horror genre. And when you look into mythology from all over the world, the UK and Scotland, Australia, African countries and European countries, Asian countries, there's also a lot of folklore here in America with interesting creatures that would make for interesting subject matters for a horror movie, make interesting antagonists for the horror genre. You know, like I've looked into this stuff for years, and I've recently dived back into it. You know, it's like, when you think American monsters, you think Bigfoot, you think Mothman, you think the Wendigo, and various other creatures. But there are so much more than just those. Every state has their own monster. Hell, in Oklahoma you have the Oklahoma octopus. In some of the lakes of Oklahoma there's legends of some kind of octopus-like creature the size of a horse that is responsible for all the drownings that have been happening around certain lakes. And of course, you know, when you go outside of America, in Australia, you have the bunyip, which is this water creature that the Aborigines have talked about for years. In Ireland, you have the Doulahan, which is a headless horseman-esque entity. You know, we have the Headless Horseman here in America, and there's headless entities all over the world. And in Ireland, there's the Doulahan, which is this headless entity that carries around his severed head and a spinal cord, like a backbone that he uses as a weapon. There are so many interesting and frightening creatures in folklore that you could make a horror movie about. So I thought it would be fun to make a video where I talk about some creatures in mythology and folklore that I think could make for interesting horror movies, or at the very least, creepy, suspenseful horror movies. I only have 5 for this video, but if people are interested, I might do this again in the future. But yeah, on that note, I'm going to be talking about 5 mythical creatures, or creatures from mythology and folklore, that I think would be good for horror movies. They would make for some interesting horror movies. And just to let you know, there is a lot of information on all these creatures. There are stories involving all these creatures out there. I encourage you to look into them yourselves. So when I talk about each creature or entity, I'm going to give very basic information because I could probably do a 20-minute video on every one of these creatures and entities alone. If you know about these creatures and I'm leaving something out, just know I'm not doing it, intentionally. I am doing it intentionally just to, try to make it so this video is not going to be too long. So, anyway, on that note, let's get into it. 5 mythical creatures and creatures from folklore that I think would make interesting subjects for a horror movie. So we're going to start in Nordic mythology because I love Nordic mythology. Out of all the mythologies out there, I have a draw towards Nordic mythology. I don't have any Norse background, and I don't really have any ancestors from Scandinavia or anything like that. But I have this draw towards Norse mythology. It's one of my favorite pantheons to study and look into. There are a lot of interesting creatures, entities, and deities in Norse mythology. Jörmungandr, the world serpent, Fenrir the wolf, so many interesting creatures. But I figured since we're focusing on horror, I would start out with the Draugr. It's pronounced Droger, Draugr. Forgive me if I mispronounce these names. Yeah, so the Draugr. Now, I actually have seen a movie about Draugrs. It's called Draug, without the R, but in the actual spelling, it's spelt with an R, so keep that in mind. Now, Draugrs are these undead creatures in Norse mythology. And the very, very, very basic way to describe them is they're like zombies, but more badass. Draugrs have the appearance of a decaying corpse, or a corpse that has of a human that is deformed in some way. It gets to a somewhat bigger size and, just more mangled and deformed looking creatures. Picture zombies with a little more intelligence and a lot more strength. Draugrs are known for being able to break people's bones and kill them with their bare hands and things like that. It's like a mixture of, in a way, a zombie, a vampire, and a ghost, all into this horrifying amalgamation. So a Draugr is essentially the spirit or the body of someone who was very greedy in life. Now, in Norse mythology, much like in Egyptian mythology and other mythologies, they would bury people with their belongings, tools that they would think they would need as they go into the afterlife, as they go into the other world. Draugrs were known to be the ghosts or spirits of very, very greedy people, and they would be cursed to not only haunt the lands where they were buried, but constantly guard over whatever treasure they are buried with. And they're very, very, anybody who invades their territory or anybody who they, any area that they have issue with, anybody is in danger because, like I said, they're very strong. There are stories where someone who is a victim of a Draugr is found with all their bones broken and they're covered in black soot and stuff like that. Now, the only way to kill a Draugr is by cutting off their head and or burning their body until it's nothing but ashes and then scattering the ashes around so that, that makes sense. No body, there's no body to come back to life, So, what makes this so good for a horror movie is because, one, there is a familiarity to it. It has similarities to the zombies that a lot of people know about in pop culture, so it's an easy monster to identify with. And it's a good threat because it's an undead creature with immense strength, and it's also ghost-like. It has the ability to go through walls and stuff, so someone can't really lock themselves in a room. The Draugr will still be able to get in to the house where everyone's trying to hide from the creature. And it's got a simple design. Their Draugrs are usually portrayed as decaying bodies or human corpses, animated human corpses that are somewhat deformed in a way. And the plot, you know, is very simple. You could have it be a period piece. There's this awesome, really creepy story about a Draugr called the Three Funerals of Thorolf Twistfoot, where this character known as Thorolf, given the name Thorolf Twistfoot, comes back as a Draugr and haunts the village where he used to live. And, you know, his relatives and other people trying to deal with that, and it eventually gets to one of the most terrifying cows you will ever encounter in a scary story. But I highly recommend checking out the Three Funerals of Thorolf Twistfoot. That story alone could be made into a period piece horror movies. You might have to adjust the story a little bit here and there so it translates better to film, but that alone could work as its own horror movie. So you could have it be a period piece, or you could have it take place in modern day. People exploring Scandinavia and coming across burial mounds, and then they end up encountering a Draugr, and then they have to learn about this creature in order to find a way to defeat it. Or, let's say you have Americans visiting Scandinavia, and then these creatures come back from the dead, and much like in Return of the Living Dead, they have that, the characters have an association with zombies, so they try everything that works with zombies in pop culture on these creatures, and nothing works, except, like cutting off the head, yes, but, you know, like, they would think zombies are slow and Draugrs are fast. They would think zombies are weak and Draugrs are strong. Draugrs, I think they used weapons. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they do use weapons. You could have a movie about archaeologists digging up a Scandinavian burial site, and then that is what releases the Draugr or Draugrs on everybody in that party. So there are different ways you could use a Draugr in a horror movie, and again, the reason it works is because there is a familiarity that people can connect with because they have a familiarity to zombies. They're not quite the same thing as zombies as we know in pop culture. They are their own thing, but there is a familiarity there that people can connect to. Draugrs, that's the first creature on this list, and I think that, that filmmakers could get some good movies out of that. Now, we're going to be making a hop, skip, and a jump over to the UK with this English entity that, when I read about this, I just thought it was so creepy, and I think it would be perfect for a solid, creepy, fucked up horror movie, but fucked up in the best possible way. So we're going to be looking at next, Black Annis. Now, Black Annis is a demonic hag-like entity that haunts England. She's apparently from the Dane Hills area. And let's get into this twisted little entity here. So, Black Annis is said to live in a cave with an oak tree outside. She's she's got pale blue skin and this frightening face. She's kind of skinny in appearance. She's got long, gangly arms with iron claws. And it's said that she hunts down children, skins them, and then hangs their skin on the oak tree out of her cave to dry them out. And then she sometimes wears those skins. Right away, we have an absolutely fucked up horror movie idea, but again, in the best way. You know, she's said to haunt the English countrysides. They say that she grinds her teeth and you can hear it from miles away, and that's a warning that she's coming. And it's a horrifying thing because children are her main target, but you could adjust this to have it translate better into a better horror film. I would have no problem having like a horror movie about a group of kids dealing with Black Annis. But I understand some filmmakers might not want a high child body count. So you could have it some older people trying to figure it out. Like maybe a family loses their child and they're trying to figure out what happens, and it leads them to Black Annis. And again, that terrifying realization when they find out that their child has been skinned alive by this horrifying spirit. But one of the things I like about the Black Annis for a horror movie is, you know, she has a simple design. Something I love is I love a good creature design, and I always think that when it comes to making a scary looking creature, simpler is better. Not always the case. Like, I like more complex creatures, but when a creature is in a horror movie, when they have a more complex design, they stop being scary and they start being cool. And I like a good cool creature, but I do think simpler designs are scarier, and in a horror movie, I would rather the design of my creature be scary. Again, there are exceptions, of course. There are always exceptions, but I do think simplicity in a design for a horror movie character can be more effective. And Black Annis, if you made her for a movie, she would have a good simple design. You know, this hag-like creature that's kind of thin and gangly with longer arms, having like metal claws. You know, so it has. There's an appeal there. There's instantly a Freddy Krueger-esque appeal to it because of the metal claws. And they also talk about her grinding her teeth, so you could have a creepy sound for the teeth grinding, maybe show her teeth kind of mangled and sharp. You know, I picture Black Annis as having pitch black eyes, and when a human-looking character has pitch black eyes, that you're halfway there in the creep factor there. But again, you know, there are different ways you could go with this. Again, you could make a period piece taking place back in the older times of England, or you could have it take place in modern day. One of the things I love about the horror genre is that it's taking ordinary people and throwing them into a frightening situation. And the idea of using folklore in your horror movie is, you know, taking average, everyday, modern people and putting them up against an ancient supernatural being that they can't really comprehend. And that would be an interesting way to deal with the Black Annis story, you know, modern day people dealing with this old mythical being and learning the horrifying truth about her. Or maybe you could have it be like a murder mystery, you know, a bunch of children have gone missing from a town and someone's looking into it, a detective is looking into it, and as he's looking into it, he learns more and more about Black Annis. And, you know, he's skeptical at first, but the more he learns, the more he starts to believe in Black Annis. And then it could be like sort of a slow burn horror movie with this investigation aspect, and then he learns about Black Annis, and then he encounters Black Annis. So, Black Annis, she's just a solid, simple, creepy entity from English mythology that really could make for a really, really creepy horror movie. Like, you know, the Draugr is scary, but Black Annis and the one we're going to be talking about next are creepy. And, you know, I really think that with Black Annis, if you made a movie about Black Annis, you would really be able to get under people's skin. Speaking of which, let's go to the next one. So the third creature I'm going to talk about here, we're going to go over to Scotland. One of the creepiest creatures from Scottish mythology is the Nuckalevee. Scottish mythology is big on water spirits, water creatures, water entities. And the Nuckalevee is a water entity that is horrifying. When I talk about this thing, like, it is terrifying. Remember how I was talking about that I love good designs with horror movie villains? The Nuckalevee has one of the creepiest appearances of any creature from folklore. I mean, if you put this creature in a movie, it would be one of the creepiest monsters in a horror movie. So, the Nuckalevee. It is a creature of the ocean that comes onto land to terrorize people. Picture a man on a horse, but the man has no legs. The upper body is fused to the horse, so the horse and the man are like one being. Now, picture this, much like Black Annis, picture this man having really long arms with sharp claws. And picture the head being bigger than a normal person's head, with its face jutting out slightly like a pig's face. And its mouth being bigger with sharp teeth. Now, again, picture it attached to this horse. And picture the horse with not two eyes, but one eye. And now picture the whole thing not having any skin. Yeah. The Knuckle-A-V is this humanoid being that is attached to the horse, and it's one entity. It's not like the horse and the man thing are separate. No, it's one creature. And it has no skin on it, so you just see its muscle, and you see its blood going through its veins, and it's like black blood. That's the Knuckle-A-V. It's a simple design, but a terrifying design. Just this horse-man thing with no skin. Now, the basic thing about the Knuckle-A-V is he comes out of the water to terrorize people. It's been known to kill animals and humans. It mostly comes out in the winter, and there are reasons for that in the mythology. Again, you can look into that yourself. But it mostly comes out during the winter. And its only weakness or deterrent is fresh water. So it doesn't come out when it rains, and it won't cross over freshwater rivers. I like the idea that the creature has a weakness. When it comes to supernatural beings in horror movies, it's important for the creature to have rules. And it's important for the movie to not break those rules, because it can create relief and horror. You know, when a creature has rules, it helps the audience be afraid of it. So it's like, yeah, okay, so the creature only comes out during the winter, but you can protect yourself by using fresh water. So there's a very easy way to handle that in a horror movie. You just have whatever people are being attacked by the Knuckle-A-V far away from fresh water. And you can also make it so that, again, make it a group of outsiders that are not used to the culture, and then when they are targeted by the Knuckle-A-V, they don't know about the fresh water thing yet, so they have to learn about that. And then that can be used like towards the climax of the film as a way for them to escape the monster. But again, having rules for your supernatural killer in your horror movie can really help. Like, okay, Freddy Krueger, one of the best examples of that. He can only kill you in your dreams. So it's very simple. You don't fall asleep, you can't get attacked by Freddy. But everybody needs to sleep. So so Freddy has rules, and therefore it helps the fear. It's like, okay, we're awake and we're safe for now, but eventually we're going to have to go to sleep, and that's when we're going to have to deal with Freddy. So that's the way with like the Knuckle-A-V. It's okay, we're getting into the winter months, it's starting to get colder, and so this thing's going to come out of the ocean. And okay, we know we can escape from it by getting to fresh water, but we have to get to that fresh water, so it adds a little hope, but it also creates tension because the people have to get to that fresh water in a way. Again, there are different ways you can handle this. Like, maybe you can make it sort of like Pumpkinhead. Again, you would have to adjust the legends a little bit to make it translate better to film. But like, okay, so like make it a little like Pumpkinhead. Like these group of outsiders come to the area, and they accidentally kill a family member of one of the characters. So he summons the Knuckle-A-V to go after these people. Or you can have this town that is constantly terrorized by the Knuckle-A-V, and again, you have outsiders coming in, and then when they're being attacked by the Knuckle-A-V, the outsiders keep locking their doors because they're too afraid to open them because they don't want the creature to get inside. So yeah, again, so there's different ways you can handle this, but the main reason I wanted to talk about the Knuckle-A-V is the design. It's a good, simple, creepy design that I think would be perfect for a horror movie, because you just picture that image. The look of the Knuckle-A-V, that's nightmare fuel. So I think that the Knuckle-A-V would be perfect for a horror movie if you just want to fuel your audience's nightmares. And so we got two more on the list, and I wanted to talk about this one next because out of all the creatures that I'm talking about here, I think this one is the most versatile for different stories you could tell with this particular creature. And we're looking at phantom dogs, or as they would be known more commonly in folklore, black dogs. Now, black dogs, this is another one of my favorite mythical creatures in horror. I mean, I'm a dog person, you know, my job involves me taking care of dogs, hence why I'm always in different locations constantly, but looking at black dogs, they are mostly known in England, but there are stories of black dogs from all around the world. There's even stories of black dogs here in America. You see them in Europe, you see them in Britain, of course, you see them in America, all over the place. Latin America, different stories of black dogs. And the interesting thing is that black dogs are not always malicious in these stories. There are a lot of stories of scary, evil black dogs, but there's also stories of these dogs being protector spirits in some way. So, you could go either way with that in a horror movie. You could make a horror movie where the black dogs are the villain, or you could make a horror movie where the black dogs are a protector, and maybe sort of make some kind of revenge movie around that. The basic concept of black dogs is just that. They are this supernatural dog that is seen as a black dog, mostly with glowing red eyes, sometimes not. And they can be seen many different ways. Sometimes they can be seen as just one dog, sometimes two, sometimes a pack of them. And focusing on the scarier side of it, running into them is not good. If you run into them, there's a chance you're not going to get out of there alive. But there's also the legend around black dogs that if you encounter a black dog, depending on what entity you're talking about, but if you encounter a black dog, you're going to die the next year. So they're like an omen of something bad that's going to happen. Now, and because there's so much variety when it comes to phantom dogs, you could have it take place in America, you could have it take place in England, again, you could have it take place in Latin America or various other places in Europe. Like the simplest story you could do is having a group of people encounter a pack of phantom dogs and them trying to escape them. They get trapped out in the middle of the bunch of people on a camping trip out in England are encountered by a pack of phantom dogs, and they got to try to figure out a way to get away from these things. Simple as that. But again, you could go the period piece route. Like, for example, the Black Dogs of Newgate Prison. Back in the late 1500s, you had Newgate Prison, and the black dogs have been haunting this prison for years, and they're said to be seen just before an execution of somebody. But the tale goes that someone was brought to the prison who was guilty of witchcraft, and before their sentencing could really go through, the prisoners who were starving went nuts and essentially ate the guy. But then people were said to have seen black dogs going around the prison and killing all the prisoners who were involved in this murder. Right there, you have a perfect setup for a horror movie there. Just take that story of Newgate Prison from that period. Just a guard in the prison finding all these prisoners dead, trying to being killed by dog attacks when there's no dog around, and him trying to figure out what's going on. And maybe there's a conspiracy around the prison trying to hide this from the public. You have one of the most famous black dogs, the Black Shuck, who was said to have terrorized a few churches back in the day and actually killed people at those churches. Now, the Black Shuck is considered to be like the size of a horse, and he's got glowing red eyes and scraggly fur. So that would be a good character for a movie. Again, a bunch of people. You could make it a period piece of that period of time where the Black Shuck was terrorizing this section of England. Again, you might have to change a few things so it can translate better to film and flow better in film language, but that could work. Or again, make it in modern times, going back to the outsider scenario, having a group of outsiders being haunted by the Black Shuck. And since the Black Shuck or black dogs can be an omen of death, like maybe have a group of friends encounter the Black Shuck. Like they're on vacation, maybe a group of Americans on vacation in England, and they encounter the Black Shuck, and then they head home. And then a year later, one by one, they start getting killed, they start getting mauled by dogs, and they start learning about the Black Shuck. Or, of course, have it take place in England and have a bunch of people being terrorized by Black Shuck in England. So yeah, the black phantom dogs and black dogs, there are so many different directions you could take this idea. That's why I think black dogs and phantom dogs are one of the perfect entities to use for a horror movie just because of how versatile you can go, how many different ways you can go with the story. So yeah, any filmmakers out there, I seriously think that Phantom Dogs would make for fantastic horror movies. And again, you can go either way. You can make them the scary kind, or you can make them the good doggies that deserve belly rubs that we all know every dog is. And the last creature that I have on this list, I put on here mostly for me. This one might not be as versatile as the other creatures I have on this list, but this monster has a personal connection with me. That is Taily Po. We're back in America for this one. Taily Po was my favorite scary story as a kid, and I've been obsessed with it ever since. I've studied the story for such a long time, heard so many different versions of the story, heard people put their own spins on the story. I love Taily Po, the story, and I love the creature. It's just like, like I said, I've been obsessed with it ever since I was a kid. And I always wondered if there was a way to take this creature and put it in a modern horror movie. Maybe not follow the original story, but use that creature in a modern horror movie. So, in the story of Taily Po, this is the very, very basic story, and there are many different versions of Taily Po, but these are the very basics here. So just the simplest version. You have this old man who lives out in the woods with his 3 dogs, and he's a skilled hunter. He lives off the land, it's during this time where he's not able to find much game. Like it's getting close to winter, and for some reason he's not able to find all these animals to feed himself. So there isn't as much food in the house, or there's mostly vegetables, and he wants to get some meat. God damn it, meat! Anyway, and so it's varies with who's telling the story of how he encounters this creature, but one day, either out in the woods or in his cabin, he encounters this strange creature. It's this creature that's cat-like in appearance, and I'm going to talk more about the design, my interpretation of the design for this creature as we go on. But it's cat-like in appearance, and it has glowing, sometimes they're yellow eyes, sometimes they're green eyes, sometimes they're red eyes, but glowing eyes, sharp teeth, talon-like claws, and this long tail. Like the thing that they notice the most is this long tail that's even longer than the creature's body. In some way, again, it's different depending on what story you tell, but in some way the tail gets severed from the creature and the creature escapes. The man uses the tail for food, since he doesn't have a lot of food in his house, to feed himself and his dogs, and then they go to bed for the night. Now the creature keeps coming back, searching for his tail, or as he calls it, it's Taily Po. It'll show up and it'll be like, Taily Po, Taily Po, I want my Taily Po, and it's trying to get into the cabin. Now, it's usually, again, it varies, but it usually goes with the guy using his dogs to chase the creature off. The creature keeps coming back, and the dogs keep chasing the creature away, but eventually the dogs don't return. And so the guy locks himself in the house, and the creature ends up getting into the cabin and ripping its tail out of the man's stomach. That's basically how the movie ends. Some stories are more kid-friendly, some versions of the story are more violent, but the basic gist of it is this thing rips this guy open to get its tail back. And like I said, in many ways, this was the story that really got me into horror. Not so much horror movies, but got me into horror. I've always loved scary, creepy things, and this story always stuck with me. So, like, my journey and my love for the horror genre as a whole, you could easily say that Taily Po was the catalyst for that. And I was always fascinated by it, mostly because in so many stories, and horror movies and ghost stories, when you're dealing with an inhuman creature, a creature that's like an animal, they don't talk. There are examples where they do talk, but in here, this particular ghost story, the creature talks. It's clearly an animal, but it has the ability to communicate. And there's so much good creepy imagery in the story. Like, when the creature, for me, the first thing to traumatize me as a kid was the climax of this story, where the old man is so terrified, he's in bed, he's got the covers over him, it's black in his cabin, his dogs are nowhere to be seen, they've either been killed or they've just gotten lost or whatever, we don't know for sure. But the creature is in his cabin, calling for his taily-po, and it crawls over the footboard of the bed, and you can mostly just notice its glowing red eyes. It's like dark in the cabin, but you can still make out the creature, and it crawls up the man's bed, crawling up to him, and then when he finds out, again, that's just like such a terrifying, like you're lying in bed and this creature is crawling up your bed. That is a terrifying thought. And the design of this creature, again, there are variations, but it is a cat-like creature. It's got ratty, matted, it's got longer, matted fur. Its feet and claws are like talons. It's got sharp teeth, glowing yellow eyes, and the long tail. And its ears are like pointed, like really pointed. So I've always, like, whenever I've pictured this creature, I've pictured it like a combination of a panther with longer fur and a lizard. You know, like a panther-like creature, but moving more lizard-like as it crawls. That's how I've always pictured this creature. And I'm just like, that's a good design for a horror monster. Now, I've always wanted to see this creature in its own horror movie. Not necessarily the original ghost story, but like a different version of that. Or like maybe a movie where the story that we know actually took place in this world, and now the townsfolk are afraid of this creature. Like, the idea I came up with in my head was, you know, the story that we know where the old man gets the creature and eats the creature's tail, and the creature rips its tail out of the man's stomach. I've always thought of it as like, you know, the creature is able to grow its tail back because it's lizard-like. And the townsfolk learn about what the creature did to the man, so they start trying to hunt it down, and then the creature fights back and kills off many of the townsfolk and develops this hatred for humanity, and then becomes this boogeyman creature in the town, and they become afraid of this creature. And as the years go by, you know, the people in the town, they lock their doors at night because they're afraid of this creature. And then the outsider the outsider idea, having a group of outsiders, you know, taking a vacation in this town, coming across this village, and then being hunted by taily-po. You know, I mean, taily-po isn't the most frightening name for a monster, but I like the name taily-po. But, you know, so I've always wanted to see a movie like that. I don't know if I would ever be able to make a film like that on my own, but I always thought about maybe writing a scary story of taily-po, but in a modern context. But yeah, taily-po, I always thought that this creature would fit well in a horror movie, just like your basic simple monster movie. But I love the idea of this creature. I love the concept, the ones I've created in my head and the ones other people have made for this creature. And because it's stuck with me ever since my childhood, I've just wanted to see it live on and become this, like, horror icon of its own. You know, you have, like, the literary horror icons, and you have the film horror icons, you have the TV horror icons. I think taily-po belongs up there, for me, because of my connection with this story. But yeah, taily-po, because of the design of the creature, because of the fact that the creature can talk, I would love to see that creature in some kind of horror movie. And not a horror movie made for kids, a horror movie made for adults, you know, gory, creepy. Again, the concept of this thing ripping its tail out of someone's stomach and then, you know, attacking humans because of how they wronged him in the past, you know, I just think that would be fantastic. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, taily-po, one of my favorite creatures of folklore, one of my favorite ghost stories. I would love to see a retelling of that in a horror movie. like from modern times. I would love to see a group of people get ripped apart by Taily Poe. It's the little things in life, you know? So yeah, that's this video. I'm sure it was pretty rambly, like a lot of my off-the-cuff videos are, but this is just something I've wanted to do for a while. Like I said, I love mythology, and I always wanted to talk a little more about mythology on this channel. Keep it a horror movie channel, but insert mythology here and there. So yeah, I hope you like this story. Let me know some of your favorite monsters from folklore, and specifically some of your favorite scary stories from mythology and folklore. And let me know some that you think would make for interesting horror movies. And let me know if you'd like me to do something like this in the future. I mean, I don't know if I will do something like this again, but if people like it, I might. Let me know if you'd like me to dive a little more into folklore. Let me know if you'd like me to talk more creepy stories on this channel. It's just something fun. But anyway, it will always be a horror movie channel, but just a little something, you know, here and there, you know. But yeah, on that note, let me know what you think of this video in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for the continued support on this channel. I know I just have my little corner of YouTube, but I like my little corner of YouTube, and I am grateful that you all take the time out of your day to watch these little videos I do. Thank you so much for the continued support. And on that note, I hope you all have a good day, a good week, or what have you, and until next time, this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.